And welcome to Ephemera. I'm fantasy author Katie Brisky.
And I'm editor Jen R. Albert. We hope you're enjoying our theme music courtesy of Alex White. Welcome to anybody joining us for the first time, and welcome back to those who have visited our virtual home before. For those of you who are new, Ephemera is an award-nominated reading series chaired by Katie and myself.
Pre-COVID, we held events in the Glad Day Bookshop. And while we await our triumphant return, we console ourselves with the vitality of this community right here on YouTube. And we would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which I live and work is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. This land is covered under Treaty 13 and is part of the Dish with One Spoon.
And the land on which I live and work is situated upon the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas, and is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. Additionally, this land is covered by the Between the Lakes Purchase 1792 between the Crown and the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. Last year, the federal government of Canada passed Bill C5, declaring a new federal holiday, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, to take place annually on September 30th. In doing so, they completed the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action number 80. It took them 5 years from the time of the publication of those calls to introduce this holiday. Compare that to 5 days it took to declare a National Day of Mourning on behalf of Queen Elizabeth II following her death on September 8th. In response to the death of Elizabeth II, Assembly of First Nations National Chief Roseanne Archibald reminded us that grief and accountability, this quote, can exist in the same space simultaneously. As National Chief, my next step in Crown relations is to fulfill TRC call to action number 45, end quote. Call to action number 45 calls for a royal proclamation and covenant of reconciliation to be issued by the Crown. The TRC recommends that Canada use both the Proclamation of 1763 and the Treaty of 1764, working with an eye to the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, to develop a royal proclamation of reconciliation, which is to reestablish nation-to-nation relationships, recognizing the sovereignty of Indigenous nations, including their right to self-governance, and reinforcing treaties which exist but have not been held up in goodwill by the Crown or the Government of Canada. This includes an official repudiation of the doctrine of discovery, an international law that gave license to Christian explorers to claim vacant land, that is not populated specifically by Christians, in the name of their sovereign. Chief Archibald attended the Queen's funeral with other Indigenous leaders, quote, as a testament that despite colonization and genocide, First Nations people are still here. Chief of Minnesconlith Indian Band, Kupi Judy Wilson, said that she was wearing orange on the Queen's Memorial Day, hoping for a new era of truth and reconciliation. She is, quote, hopeful that the dialogue King Charles and National Chief Archibald began on truth and reconciliation, including a request for apology for the role of the Anglican Church in the devastation wrought upon our communities by the inhumanity of residential schools, will not only continue but lead to greater respect and understanding. I stand with many leaders across the country who will continue to call for the first official act of King Charles III to be the renunciation of the doctrine of discovery. It might not be that likely unfortunately, but it is more than a symbolic act. This renunciation, real and active legal justifications are rooted today in this racist doctrine, which meant that the Crown could claim sovereignty over Indigenous occupied land that made possible the Indian Act and all of its associated atrocities. It's relevant in legal proceedings today. So this is an important step. The National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is September 30th, next Friday, and our theme today is vitality. We're hoping that holding space on this day brings new vitality to the conversations about meaningful reconciliation and Indigenous sovereignty. We encourage you to look into events local to you on that day and to listen to Indigenous leaders, to look toward education and understanding of these matters and to work towards concrete changes where you can. I'll provide the links to some information on the call to action 45 and 49, which is about the things that I was just talking about in the chat. So you can look into that yourself as well.
Thank you. I think a very timely reminder. And it's September, of course, which always adds some pep to my step amongst everything else.
You never do outgrow that back to school excitement, do you?
No. Except, Prancy, our skeleton deer friend, is sad that after tonight, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, the nights will become longer than the days.
Oh yes, the equinox is tonight, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe we can find a way to cheer him up here in the Northern Hemisphere. But for now, I am pleased to introduce our first reader tonight. Oghenechovwe Donald Ekpeki is an African speculative fiction writer and editor from Nigeria. He won the Nebula Award and is a multiple Hugo Award finalist. He also won the Otherwise Nomo BFA and is a finalist for the WFA, the World Fantasy Award, the Locust, the BSFA, and the Sturgeon Awards. His fiction and nonfiction have appeared in Strange Horizons, Galaxy's Edge, Apex, Asimov's, Tor.com, and more. He edited and published Bringing Worlds Anthology, the first ever Year's Best African Speculative Fiction Anthology, and co-edited the Dominion and Africa Rising anthologies. He founded Jambifola Press and the Emeka Walter Dinjo's Memorial Award for Disability in Speculative Fiction. He is a CanCon Guest of Honor and 2023 ICFA Guest of Honor. Essentially, he is one of the most celebrated writers and editors in speculative fiction right now. Welcome, Oghenechovwe Donald Ekpeki.
Hi. Okay, hi, nice to meet you guys, even if I haven't met you guys. Yeah, so I'll be reading from my short story, which was published in Asimov's and May-June issue of Asimov. It was reprinted in the September-October issue of Galaxy's Edge. You can check it out right now on Galaxy's Edge. It's titled Destiny Delayed. It's speculative fiction, John Bender, if I want to use a different term. Recently there was a debate about the definitions of science fiction and fantasy. And I want to mention that my story does not adhere to any of those definitions. As a matter of fact, most speculative fiction stories by African writers will not adhere to any of those definitions or contain those elements, only those elements that will allow you to define it that simply. They will contain elements that will be that can fall under, either labels, as broad labels as possible, fantasy, science fiction, horror elements, however you define them across the ages. So as a matter of fact, literary fiction stories by African writers will also contain speculative fiction elements. So, the whole idea of genre is really very shaky. Anyways, I'll launch into my story. I'll be reading from the middle, somewhere in the middle. So yeah. Mukoro and Chinedu sat drinking at a beer parlor at Montgomery, Yaba. Bottles of Alomo, good and small stout, littered their table. Hunched over, they discussed dreams and ambitions, as fermented as the leftover alcohol in their bottles. They were seeking ways to escape the penury that clung to them, like paint on the wall, ever fading, but never quite gone. It clutched them with the tenacity of a wounded soldier behind Boko Haram lines, far from home, but unwilling to leave this world without a goodbye to his family. So I let them extract her destiny as collateral for a loan of any amount I want, Mukoro was asking. Not any amount, but an amount not exceeding 8 figures in Naira. And that after reading her destiny to ascertain its worth. Mukoro rubbed his beard. I see, he said thoughtfully. Chinedu looked at him with shrewd eyes that retained their sharpness despite the numerous bottles of alcohol they had consumed. You don't seem overly surprised by any of this. Mukoro shook his head. I studied systems engineering, and my PhD was in soul mapping and interaction with spirit particles. He glanced at Chinedu before adding, what do you think my research and projects are all about? You could say destiny led us here. Mukoro leaned forward and continued. My grandfather was a great jazz man in his time. He was blind but could see more clearly than those with 2 eyes. He could uncannily put together pieces of the unformed future. You know, that is what they do when they map the soul and read a person's destiny. The device they call a fortify can map what we now call spirit particles, or what the rest of the world know of as dark matter. The fortifier is built to calculate the propensity of the soul, like a sort of advanced probability. If you want to simplify it, you can say it's a combination of very advanced possibilities tied to your DNA structure and other things we don't yet fully understand. Kind of like how you know a fit person might go into sports or a lonely person into arts or literature. The fortifier is the real breakthrough. It finds a way to extract the unique strand of each person's propensity and store it in a soul cube. Mr. Mukoro stopped talking to take a pull of his beer. Chinedu called for a waiter. 2 more bottles of big stout. When the waiter departed, Chinedu turned to Mukoro and asked, so what does all this have to do with your grandfather? Oh yes, I got caught up in explaining about the process and my work. I love to talk about my work with those who can listen. Anyway, my grandfather prophesied that I would give my child a great destiny. This was before my first degree, when I didn't know anything about this. He used the word destiny in English, even though he wasn't educated or spoke any languages other than Yoruba. Mukoro's eyes became distant, as if he could stare across time to the event of the prophecy's utterance. My grandfather had never been wrong in such utterances before. I don't think this one will be wrong either. That is why I'm so focused on my research. I want to leave a legacy for my child. I want to ensure she gets that promised destiny. This is for her, you understand? It's my destiny to grant her a great destiny. I must bequeath her more than was bequeathed on me. But I cannot do much as it is. It seems destiny cannot be realized without funds. I can't even get a reasonable job with my PhD, much less funding for my research. I can't apply for foreign grants with a project like this. It has only made headway here because of our combination of science and spirituality. It took the work of the Council of Dibias, Babalawos, and scientists to learn how to interact with the spirit particles. So I can't get funds from outside, as they would not think much of a project like this. But if I can get the loan from your bank to finish my research, I can perhaps leave something for Nero and fulfill my destiny to grant her a great destiny. I see, Chinedu said. Not that I want to make you question this, since it's my job to get people to take loans. But you are also my friend. Isn't the loan unnecessary? The breakthrough has been done already and monetized. Of what use is your research? Mukoro laughed until tears trickled from his eyes, and he wiped them. You should know that no research is ever finished. All the technology we have is still being improved on. And this is a new area. There's still a lot more to discover. Chinedu smiled. So I'll see you at the office tomorrow then. Yes. You said extracting the destiny doesn't hurt. Yes, it doesn't hurt. It's just a net weight of probabilities and the person's propensity to achieve a thing. In the same way that being paralyzed doesn't kill. I know, I just want to confirm. And the destiny will be kept intact, returned, and reintegrated with the source. Of course, it will be returned and reintegrated once the loan is fully paid, along with interest. And it's legal for parents to take a loan with the destiny of a child, a minor. Yes, although it's a legal gray area as the law doesn't recognize the procedure yet. The law is still catching up, so you have nothing to worry about. You cannot sin where there is no law. Parents and legal guardians can consent on behalf of their children. It's like taking your child for a bone marrow transplant. I'll talk to my wife about it tonight, Mukoro said, and frowned as if he hadn't been reassured by the idea that what he was doing was a sin, even if he wouldn't be held responsible. Chinedu noticed the look on his face. Remember, you're doing this for her and to fulfill your grandfather's prophecy. I know, Mukoro said. Chinedu poured his remaining drink from the bottle, another 3 more bottles from Mukoro. Mukoro thanked him, took another long pull, and then said, "Nothing more for you." "Nah, I'm all right for now," Chinedu said. "I have to rise early for work tomorrow. I have to wake up by 4 and leave before 5 to beat island traffic." Mukoro rose to shake Chinedu's hand and see him off. "All right, good night. Don't forget to talk to Madame about it this night," Chinedu called as he left. Mukoro returned to his drink, his somber thoughts rising vampire-like, despite his efforts to bury them in eternal. So I'll stop there. That's my reading for today.
Awesome. What a wonderful way to start off the night. Thank you so much for that. And I see what you mean with the comments you gave about genre at the beginning, which I loved. By the way, I can absolutely see how that plays out in your story. That was wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And you can catch the rest of the story in Galaxy's Edge. So
Yeah.
Thank you. Jen, have you thought of what about Prancy? How will we help him?
Oh, I thought of a way. To liven him up.
Yes.
Those are bigger.
Can you liven up a skeleton deer? Like, do dead things have vitality?
A good question. The bigger question than we can handle in this reading series. But we can play a game.
I like games. They often make me feel vitalized.
Great. It is a guess who game. I will give 3 clues and you have to name the book. Ready?
Well, by you mean the general you, yes, like the audience.
You, the audience, like, yes.
Yes.
The book is set in a dystopian future where most people can no longer dream. 2, continued in Hunting by Stars in 2021. And 3, named one of Time Magazine's 100 best YA books of all time.
My goodness, 3 intense clues. You can give us your chat for that book in the chat, or your guess for that book in the chat, or let us know on Twitter. And while you do that, it is my pleasure to introduce our poet tonight. Jessica Cho is a Riesling Award-winning writer of SFF poetry and short fiction. Their work has appeared in Fantasy Magazine, Fireside, Apparition Lit, Anathema, Spec from the Margins, and Correo, among other places, with pieces upcoming in Death in the Mouth, an anthology of original horror by people of color, and Queer Little Nightmares. They can be found online at @wordsbycho on Twitter and sellmewellversed.wordpress.com. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. When thinking about the theme of vitality, some of the themes that came to mind were not just, the concepts of life and growth, but also sort of the power and the energy that comes from ensuring continued survival. And so with that in mind, I have a selection of 3 poems that all sort of approach that theme in kind of different ways. So the first of them is, it was originally published in Fireside earlier this year, and it's titled a message from her feline self, unborn, to her cousin whose ancestors were once wolves. Our mother tears open the moon to show us futures when we are still wrapped in her belly, womb warm, nursing trust and waiting to be given shape. In sleep, she builds us dreams, a fractal of possibilities, 1,000 upon 1,000, as branched as our own lives still yet to be lived, where we could be anything, anyone. Without fail, the end of every dream, every story, finds you waiting with jaws wide, teeth sharp, primed for the hunt and the chase. Proud criminal, hungry for more than meat and blood, for more than your fair share. We have not even met, but it is because of you and yours that we come into this world with feet already knowing how to run, or eyes already able to tell what is shelter and what is safe. These are things worth knowing, truer than our own names. Yet there is one dream our mother saves, one she pries free only when she is certain we are alone, no thieving eyes, no ears to soak up secrets. In this dreaming, she shows us a forest, primordial and huge, massive trunks bleeding sap and water like tears, air spiced with the scent of small things, unaware of how insignificant are their lives, snuffed out as easily, as inevitably as stars. Here, paths are carved from pale light, and we follow, knowing the way is open for us and us alone. Here we grow to greatness. Here we hunt, catch trembling bodies beneath our claws, built to rend and water the soil with blood, an offering from ourselves to ourselves, a gift of flesh and feasting. Here we will not hide. In that soft dream of her belly, still formless and depthless, we make her a promise that when we are grown, we will dream a new story, plant a new forest, one in which the trees do not receive you, one in which the moon creates futures with eyes and ears only for us. So, cousin, when we are birthed into cold air onto cold stone, remember, before your legs grow strong enough to give chase, before you insist upon your inheritance of earth, wearing your confidence like barding, gaudy in your own self-surety, remember that ancient forest, the silence of our footfalls and the shape of our claws. Remember how we stripped you down to bare bone and fear. Remember how we took your moon from you, hung her in the night sky. Remember how we stole the warmth from her gaze, the fire from her smile. Remember how we made you howl. So that was the first, excuse me. The second was published earlier this summer in Anathema Spec. It is titled Water to Grow a Garden. I bury my feet in the dirt, hoping that they might choose for once to stay and learn the trick of giving back, of feeding that which sees to me in turn. But seeds carried over an ocean of salt have never known nurture. A body that was torn off at the roots will never know nurture. Your body does not know what to feed itself, instead feeds off itself, gives of itself. There is a garden growing in your skin, fibrous vines twisting up your spine, blooms bursting from your mouth in purples and reds, a riot of colors, not knowing that their very birth heralds the start of their own end. You are a transplant mistaking autumn for false spring, rooting deep into soil already stripped and sterile, tenacious, unable to accept that there is nothing here for you, and that even if you were left in peace, you would surely starve. I gather water in my cupped palms, just enough to soothe cracked earth, to soften the trauma of your uprooting. But you refuse me, tilt your head back to face the sun and ask, how much water to erase a history, to wash a life so clean that its roots no longer remember anywhere but here? I have no answer, barren but for the cinquefoil growing where my tongue should be. I could pull words from my throat as easily as I could pull my feet from the dirt, but lies are seeds that spread in strangling vines. I could tell you never. I could tell you roots will always remember. But in truth, it takes an ocean. But what no one ever told me is that you never have to touch a drop. I tilt my wrist and pour. Okay. And then finally, I have my third poem, which is published in Fantasy Magazine in November of 2021. This one is called After the End. When the story ends, the hero's hands wiped clean, sword gleaming above the mantle, there are those of us who find the belly of a castle is no place for children who grow like weeds, like vines, like yellow straw. There are other predators than wolves, upright beasts in fine cloth, with charming smiles who can't be stopped with a rose or a kiss or a promise. Sooner the belly of a wolf, whose hunger for meat and blood is honest, or given time, we might cut our own way free. Under cover of night, we slip from two soft beds and flee through doors with practiced ease, our skills earned from years with witches, spells, and huts where one misstep meant hot coals, wide jaws, or a hunter's knife. Some follow the stars or a compass of ivory. A lucky few pull mirrors from their pockets and whisper questions, while others put their nose to ground, ears cocked for the baying hounds. We find each other, join hands as we wind through now familiar trees, our eyes bright as mirror shards, our feet tough as iron nails. If asked where we're headed, we'll shrug, mumble something about grandmother's house, while we follow the whispered pull of home, home, home. Home is where the woods are. Home is where the old cottage burns to cinders to feed the soil. Home is where we kick off our dancing shoes, loose our hair, bury our toes in the dirt, and grow roots deep enough to tear down the tower, stone by stone by stone. Home is a garden where once grew a briar, where we bloom like apple blossoms and shine like spun gold. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'm always glad that I'm muted while everyone is reading because I get very excited by it. That was absolutely gorgeous, and I love that take on vitality too. That's a one. Yeah, no, I love when we get all of these different perspectives on the themes that we choose. It makes the event. So thank you so much, Jessica.
Thank you, Jessica. Lots of wows in the chat too.
And lots of wows in my heart and in Prancy's heart. But Prancy, our skeleton dear friend, is dying to know, what is the first answer in our first game?
It is, of course, The Marrow Thieves by Sherry Dimily. Thanks, Stevie Reeds, for getting that first in the chat.
All right, I think I want to try one. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing. Three clues to guess a book, and hopefully cheer up Prancy. So this book was a Bram Stoker Award winner. It contains an elk as a key element, and it blends horror and social commentary and like deep character study.
Okay. Well, give us your best guess on Twitter and in the chat, viewers out there. And now another reader, we have Natasha Ramoutar. Natasha is a writer of Indo-Guyanese descent based in Toronto. Her debut poetry collection, Bittersweet, was released in 2020, and she was the co-editor of Feel Ways, an anthology of Scarborough literature. She is currently working on a novel. Note in this, there's, I think Natasha will be reading two things. In Apple Jelly Empress, there is body snatching / body horror, and in One Blink, there's militarized government force and missing loved ones for content warnings. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. And yeah, if I have, I'm gonna keep a kind of stopwatch going, and if I have time, I'm gonna read both. But I'm gonna start with One Blink. And One Blink was published in the, I believe, 1.3 issue of Augur magazine. And when I was thinking about the theme and thinking about the vitality, one thing that I was thinking about was how we pull vitality from joy. and how that joy can energize us even amidst really sad or distressing circumstances. And so in this piece, it's the narrator's kind of reminiscing and thinking about that joy, even as there is kind of this dystopian world around her. One blink. A long time ago, before the shisha cafes were banned in the city, before the curfew was implemented, and back when the dog parks were still open, we used to be inseparable. I remember those days because they were the last time I felt like I was growing up at the right speed. Every day we would take Rex to that dog park at McCowan and Ellesmere, where the grass always grew too high and the dandelions sprouted up below the steel gate. Like ritual, we would play monkey in the middle, tossing the ball back and forth just out of reach of his flattened snout. Eventually, he'd get tired and would roll onto his back, his fat little legs in the air, until we slipped the ball into his waiting mouth. When I got him on my 6th birthday, I was so excited that my body became weightless. I bounced off the walls, ricocheting from corner to corner, from floor to ceiling as I narrowly avoided hitting him. And you, big brother, were as cool as a sea cucumber and scratched him behind the ear. We threw the beach party a few days shy of my 20th birthday, right before they banned the press in the Union. That summer night, the moon was as full as cheese and the heat hung around us like a barely tolerable friend. And all of our young, aspiring sound weavers spun until the sun came up. The milky beams along the shore lent us most of our light. We danced in the sands of the bluffs. By day, this place was for sauntering strolls and first dates, and by night, for bonfires and beach parties. We basked in the moonlight like Maynard, Bacchus's children driven to dance by unfiltered joy. The smooth beat slipped into our bones, and our joints and muscles moved our limbs like marionettes, stuttered our heartbeats. Sweaty shoulders pressed against sweaty shoulders, the smell of the sea washing in with each gust of salty air to dry our sweat, only to have our pores pour out more. We had never seen this many people on the beach at the same time. You and Maxwell had outdone yourselves. Watching you two whispering dreams below the sound waves, I could tell you were thinking about what lay ahead. Event organizing, party promotion, some kind of not-for-profit sound weaver center. There was a moment where we broke off to get to higher ground. We followed the route up from the sandy shores to the rocky terrain, level 2 of the bluffs. Rex walked dutifully next to you, far away from the path's edge, tripping on the roots of a stray tree every so often. The height of the escarpment would give us a better view of the flames that would fly brilliantly in the sky in celebration. You remember, don't you? We went with all your high school friends, Shauna, who painted and sang, your girlfriend Tiana, who used to run track, and Maxwell, your partner in love and crime, who was the first of us to be taken. You know, the friends they tell us didn't exist. You took a break from sound spinning to come up there with me. I had always been the apprehensive little sister, afraid of heights, afraid of the dark, afraid of my own shadow. And you had always been the one to reassure me that it was going to be all right. That must be why you came up there with me, even though you were mid-set. Even though you had never played for this many people before, sure as nails, you passed it off and headed out with us. When we got to the cliff, the noises began. As vast, as steady as the 110 beats per minute dance hall down at our open-air dance hall. Sunshots streaked across the night sky, trailing bright sparks while the ground beneath our feet shook from the tanks rolling in. Still, we sat there at the top of the cliff, all drifty-eyed and horizon longing as I leaned against you, Your arm over my shoulder, the weight of Rex's body stretched across our legs. A single firework sprinted across the sky, untouched by the chaos. We let its light fill our eyes as we thought it was the end of the world. In some ways, I wish it had been. One blink, and you and Maxwell were gone. Thank you. And then the next piece that I'm going to read, I'll probably read just an excerpt of Apple Jelly Empress, but the full title of this piece is How to Find the Apple Jelly Empress. It's written in a sort of instructional style, in a bit of a kind of like urban legend or folktale style. And for this one, with the idea of vitality, I was thinking about the idea of play and how a lot of those kind of urban legends, or a lot of the kind of urban legends that you seek out as teens or as children, kind of have that energy to them. So this piece is called How to Find the Apple Jelly Empress. It's unpublished, so it's just an excerpt that I'll be reading. How to Find the Apple Jelly Empress. The first thing I have to say, and I wish I didn't, but here we are, is for the love of God, don't go trespassing into anyone's backyard. I know that's something I wish I didn't have to mention, but there's been a few incidents now where someone has come asking only to hop fences on Meandering or Upper Rouge, and the alarms go off, and it's just one big mess. And one more thing, don't go through the zoo either. Listen, you can technically get to this place by following Zoomobile Road, but you don't want to get stopped by zoo security or worse, the cops. Okay, so here we go. First step is to get yourself into the Rouge, into the valley, behind any of those streets in a safe and legal way. I stress once again, safe and legal. You'll want to go in while the sun is still down, while the sun's still up. An hour before sunrise is ideal, but it gives you less room for getting lost or getting stopped or getting distracted. And trust me, are there ever distractions out there? Any time between 3 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. will do in a pinch, if you want to give yourself more time. It's safer to go in pairs, but no groups bigger than 3. If you go alone, you'll have an easier time finding it, but let's just say there's more menacing things in the woods as well. But that's a story for another time. Once you're in the Upper Rouge Valley, walk straight towards the river. If you're using a compass, be headed north. About halfway on your journey, the compass will start to spin. If you're using the GPS on your phone, it'll relocate your marker to Buffers Park, which is definitely not where you are. At this point, just put your phone or your compass away. Turn right at the sugar maple tree. You'll know the one when you see it. There's no special markings or special features. You'll just know. A feeling will rise in you like hot bread springing from the toaster, and you will know. Walk until you find the trembling aspen stump. You might start hearing conversations at this point. Ignore what they're saying. It's rude to eavesdrop. And besides, it's all fairy folk things, and you wouldn't understand anyway. All blessings and curses that sound more like the wind whistling in the trees than actual words, at least to us. So you're at the stump, right? Circle the stump clockwise 3 times, then leave something of value there. Did I forget to mention that before? Make sure you bring something valuable with you, or this whole trip is pointless. Forest folk love things that hold sentimental value, so make sure it's a worthy offering. If it's not a worthy offering, 3 days later you'll wake up with sores, though you fell in a bed of poison ivy. You won't get whatever you're offered back, so say your goodbyes from now. Some people have offered lockets or Tamagotchis or river stones. It's really up to you. Circle the tree twice counterclockwise, then north. You're back to the stump. Close your eyes and count to 8. You might feel the urge to throw up at this point, but don't do that. Swallow the bile back in your belly. I know it's nasty, but it's important. After you've swallowed, you'll feel the reflux again, except this time, it'll taste like apples. Turn back around and open your eyes. You won't be at the stump anymore. And I think that's a good place to stop. Thank you.
Oh, that was so cool. Again, I love different takes on vitality. Wonderful. I want the rest though. But I will contain myself for now, because I know that Prancy is looking for a correct answer.
And what is the answer?
And the correct answer for that was, and I even have it here, The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones.
I think Prancy.
Apropos.
I think Prancy would really liked that one. Has he regained his vitality yet?
I mean, one more round never hurt anyone. Roll of threes, right?
Yeah, fair. Okay, fairy tales. I will think of a good one. Okay, I got it. It is an anthology, not a novel. It contains a story by an Ephemera alum, and it is edited by the author of the former Canada Reads pick, Johnny Appleseed.
Amazing. That's a good one to end on. And while audience, you think about that, it is my pleasure to introduce our final reader tonight. Maria Dong is the author of Liar, Dreamer, Thief, which comes out January 10th, 2023 from Grand Central Publishing. Her short fiction, essays, and poetry have been published in dozens of magazines like Lightspeed, Augur, Nightmare, Correo, Fantasy, Apex, Apparition Literary Magazine, and this year's Best American Science Fiction and Fantasy. She is represented by Amy Bishop at Distel, Godric, and Bure. Welcome, Maria.
Hi, so excited. Okay, so first of all, if you are a person who's uncomfortable with stories about addiction or obsession, maybe this is not a great story for you to listen to. So practice some self-care, come back later. Actually, I'm the last person, so you can probably just go and enjoy your evening. This story is called A Star on Earth is Always Lonely. It's in Fusion Fragment. Whenever I do readings, I'd like to kind of bring like more obscure magazines. And this is one of my very favorites. I have tons and tons of stories that I love in Fusion Fragment. And it's available for like pay whatever you want, which includes free. So if you're like, I want a sample, there you go. You can do that. Actually, I'm going to start a stopwatch. I have terrible ADHD and I'm completely time blind. So it could be like an hour or 5 minutes. I have zero idea. So I have a little cue there. And then just a kind of fun note about this story, the name Byolwon, which is the name of the first person in the story, Byol is a Korean word that means star. And it's a very rare name because a lot of Korean names have Chinese characters in them, but there are some names that are like uniquely Korean. They don't have like a Chinese character analog. And this is one of them. So I don't know. That's why it's called A Star on Earth is Always Lonely, because I was feeling clever. Okay. Byolwon's hands roam his body like radar, scouring through the shower steam for a sign, a lump of flesh, a scar, a hard chip floating erratically in his skin like a piece of satellite debris. There's no concordance on the message boards as to what this sign might look like, which means anything could confirm his fears. He thinks he finds it in his earlobe, a rice-like grain by the piercing hole, but then he locates a corresponding bump on the other side and flushes with shame. How is it possible that so much of his body is still foreign topography when he spent the last 2 years cataloging it under a microscope? The water runs hot, then tepid. When it's too cold to bear, he steps out, teeth chattering, and dries off. He's still in the damp towel when he filters into the living room. Hey. Chase nods a greeting, but his eyes float unfocused, his pupils pinned into needle points. He's violated the terms of the carefully negotiated agreement that followed their last screaming match. Byolwon has drawn boundaries around Chase's addiction, lines in the sand that Chase respects just long enough to make him wonder if the lapses are unintentional. Not in the house, not without telling me first so I can make sure you're safe, not with other people. Each time Chase forgets, a bitter poison slides past Byolwon's lips and down his throat. His stomach churns even though it shouldn't. He's sick. It's not me. It's not about me. Chase reaches for Byolwon. You're not mad, are you? Byolwon bristles, but he submits to the scent of soap and Chase's clammy skin. It's so hard to hate Chase when he's high and filled with love. Chase high is Chase brave and fearless, Chase giggling and childish, Chase full of caresses and promises of forever, and how desperately Byolwon needs the feeling of forever, even as Chase's plummeting weight renders it a lie. But Byolwon can't fault Chase for that. It's not like his own life expectancy is any better. He waits until Chase turns away, and then his hands are roaming his body again, searching for some sign of his creator. Checking time, sorry. Byolwon met Chase at an inner office party shortly before discovering that dying was preferable to working in an office. It's one thing to play nice for a day or a month, but his social skills only work when people are new, when his trust in them is still whole. Their mistakes become ruptures. Ruptures become an uncrossable chasm. Byolwon's body doesn't know how to forgive, or so he thought. As it turns out, he was just saving all his forgiveness for Chase. The room is dark when he meets this friend of a friend of a friend, full of loud, clanging music, just barely overtaken by a woman yelling a diatribe about synthites. It could be you, it could be anyone, but it all fades as soon as Bylwen sees Chase. His eyes are soft and full of impish humor, and when he smiles, a dimple appears on his chin. Within moments, Bylwen understands the concept of orbit, a full centering of his world. Chase is all caress and open vulnerability. 4 minutes in, he stands on top of a folding table and yells, "I love this guy, I love this guy." Despite Bylwen's horror, despite the swollen music and the slow camera pan-like feeling of encroaching danger, he's caught in this stranger's gravity. Later, Bylwen will wonder if he was trapped by his own refusal to believe in the spell. Magic works best on those that don't agree with its existence, and Bylwen has always vehemently denied the possibility of soulmates. Chase texts once, and then not again for a week, and just as Bylwen's gotten over the ache, Chase is back again, apologizing for losing his phone. He persists through Bylwen's anger for a month, until they agree to meet on Old Campus, on a hill overlooking a decrepit and thoroughly Gothic building that used to be an insane asylum. The whole drive, Bylwen tries to decide if he's forgiven Chase enough to sleep with him. He's hungry to be close to someone, even or especially someone he partially hates. He arrives 5 minutes late. The lot's empty. Bylwen fights the urge to gun it past. He parks and tries to concentrate on the view. He flips open the visor mirror. In the rear view, he sees Chase approach on foot, which is both surprising and quaint. Chase taps softly on the passenger window with a fingernail. Tink, 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 and Bylwen unlocks the door. "Sorry about that," Chase slides in. "I couldn't decide what to wear." His shirt is crumpled. Bylwen can tell it's soft in a way that only years can bring. He nods tensely. He's never had a date unfurl like this, a man on foot, feeling jealous of a shirt's softness. He glances out the back window as if Chase's car is merely hiding. "You walked here?" Chase nods and cracks a half smile, one that feels so uncertain it's floating. "Yeah, I hate driving, like really hate it. Got into a car accident a while ago." A pause. "Never quite got over it." This disclosure, even in the crush of fear and pain and gentleness in Bylwen's chest, he understands the gamble of it, the vulnerability of it. His appetite roars like a furnace, desperate to consume Chase and his soft shirt, his soft mind, and all his soft sweetness. Bylwen leans over, makes it 9/10 of the way, before he remembers this is not safe. But by then, Chase has closed the gap, and they're kissing, and Bylwen cannot think through his desire. Laughing, they embrace the ungainliness of maneuvering in the car's close confines. Chase stops Bylwen with a hand before they get down to belt buckles. Maybe this is enough for the first date. Bylwen wants it even more then. Perhaps 10 years ago, he would have tried to take it, wearing Chase down with hot breath on his neck until he reconsidered his stance. But Bylwen has learned fear, the value of consent. He nods, and they return to their respective sides until Chase leans his seat back to look at the emerging stars. Bylwen suddenly unsure what to do with his body, with his hands. He copies Chase, the seat popping into recline as Bylwen pulls the handle. Chase's voice is dreamy. "Can I ask you something?" Bylwen stiffens. He wishes that he was sitting up, as if this moment is somehow punishment for allowing himself to relax his body, if not his mind. "What is it?" "First, I want you to know that, like, I'm an open-minded guy. No, judgment or anything." Oh, God. Bylwen's already done something worthy of condemnation. "Okay," he says, managing to time the swallow so that his voice still sounds cool and collected. "How long have you known?" Bylwen blinks. It's an impossible question. He never knows anything for certain. He shrugs. "Known what?" Chase laughs softly and looks up at the Buick's blue velvet ceiling, as if the stars are there and not out the windshield. "You know, that you're a synthete." Bylwen's world stops. His mouth opens. Electricity crackles across his chest, even as his legs and arms go numb. This is what Chase thought? That Bylwen wasn't even real? Chase sees his expression and pales. The dreamy softness of his smile suddenly vanishes. "Oh, God, I'm so sorry. I thought, wow, you must think I'm really stupid." Bylwen laughs nervously and shakes his head. "Yeah, no, it's okay." The haze in his mind clears. Stop thought processes restarting. His reaction was too violent for the offense, but Chase had caught him off guard. "Listen, I'm sorry. I know I fucked up. I'll go." And before Bylwen even concocts a reply, Chase's door opens, his seat squeaks, and he's gone. Click, squeak, slam. An odd coda to an odder evening. Bylwen drives home, gets undressed, and crawls into bed naked. Before long, he's drifting. Not quite awake, not quite asleep, just letting the contours of the bed hold him up as if he'd melt without it. He should read a book, watch television, surf Twitter, do anything but turn Chase's words over and over in his mind, a hypothetical that he allows to drift through him like smoke. Bylwen's parents both died in a car accident when he was 10. He remembers the teacher waving him out of her class, his aunt waiting for him in her shiny fake leather shoes. Bylwen was heartbroken. but also relieved because he'd already felt the deep gulf between him and the people that should have understood him, almost as if he wasn't really part of them. Is it possible? He sits up finally, searches. When thumbing through a million tabs proves more than his phone's processor can handle, the battery dropping until the screen turns black, he switches to his computer. So I have 2 minutes left, but I think this is probably a good stopping place. And I just want to like really quick put in a note and be like, hey, so there are some probably questionable things on the part of Gilwan and the way he feels about himself and his partner. And I'm not like endorsing those things. I can't believe this has to be said in this day and age, but I just want to like jump in there and say that really quick. So I think that's probably a good stopping place though, because like, I don't know, it's a long story. So it's for free if you want to read it somewhere.
This is excellent. Thank you so much. Like, you know, when you meet someone for the first time, but it kind of feels like you've known them forever. It's kind of how I felt with the story. Like the character voice was just so strong.
Oh, thank you. That's really sweet.
And I believe you actually have another story in Fusion Fragment coming out on September 28th. Yes, in Fusion Fragment 13.
Yep. And it's actually sort of a weird companion story to this one. Like thematically, they were meant to be kind of together and then they didn't go together, but then they wound up in the same magazine. So they are together, just like time
dilation. It was meant to be.
Yeah, I don't believe in time anyway, clearly. So it's
fake. So yeah, should look out for that next week.
And buy my book. No, sorry.
Now, if I'm right about our final book of the night in this Guess Who game, I think I may actually have it on my shelf.
Okay, well, then I'll hold your guess because we can see what the audience has said. And we have smart audience. Stevie Reads knew all three of these. Love After the End, an anthology of two-spirit and indigiqueer speculative fiction, edited by Joshua Whitehead.
That is the one. And for those who enjoyed Darcy Little Badger's reading on Ephemera last year, it has her story for a Bottle, along with many other amazing pieces.
So how is Prancy doing now?
He is full of vitality. He is dancing and prancing. Although the nights are getting longer, stories and friends like this will keep his vitality running high all through the winter and beyond.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you, readers. Thank you, audience. Until next time, please don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Ephemera Series and subscribe to this YouTube page. We'd like to thank the Ontario Arts Council and the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America for their funding assistance.
And as we close out tonight, we'd also like to thank our fabulous readers, our composer, Alex White, our friends, families, loved ones, and you. Thank you for staying with us. We will see you for our next event on October 19th, right here on YouTube. Good night.
Thanks so much.